Good morning and welcome to today's class. Today is week 3 of our 6-week course, and our subject today is landscapes. So this landscape is a photo that I stumbled across on Facebook. I happened to find quite a few photos on Facebook, and you can see at the top here where it is and who's taken the photograph. So if you do want to share your painting anywhere on social media, please acknowledge the photographer. It's really important to acknowledge them because they're very kind to give us these amazing pictures to paint, because there's no way I'd be getting out to those places and taking fabulous photos. So make sure you do that. And we're going to start off as usual with our charcoal today. So if you want to get your drawing paper ready or your art diary, so I've just got a little art diary here that I keep all my charcoal drawings in. Excuse my voice, I've had a bit of a cold. Still getting over it. So hopefully it'll last for the next couple of hours. Okay, and then some charcoal. So I'm going to use a long stick to do my main outlines, and then a short fat piece is really good to do your little bits of blending and things like that. So maybe just those two shapes will be good for today. I always have my set nearby so I can grab other ones if I feel like I need them. So don't limit yourself, but always have something close by that you can easily pick up and grab. So we're going to refer to the black and white version today for this start part of the class. And that's because it's showing us all the different tones in the picture. So when you look at your black and white picture, you can see you've got very light, which will be the whitest areas. And then we go down into soft greys up in the clouds. The greenery or the trees and shrubs and things are fairly dark. So they would what I would call a mid-tone, would be what I'd call a mid-tone. And then in the foreground, we've got similar tones. So you can see the different tones in there. And that really helps you to decide on the colours to use. And then if you want to create more drama in your art, you can add more dark or more light and just make it a little bit more vibrant and interesting. And in the water, we've got beautiful light to mid-tones, and then the reflections of the trees. I love doing reflections. So I think this will be a really fun class. So as we always do, first up, we roll up our page and we do a little thumbnail. So I'm just going to draw up a thumbnail or a area on my page that's around the same shape as my picture today. So we're going landscape today. So that's wide across the top and narrower on the sides. And then you want to find your halfway points. So a line down the middle and another line across the center. So we've divided our page into 4 segments. And you can see on the reference picture, excuse the stripes in mine, my printer decided to do something funny. But you can see on there that each segment of the picture is now divided into 4 parts. That just helps us to draw it up and get everything in the right spot. So with reference to that, we're now going to put in some line markings. Just trying to get myself in the right spot here so I can see everything all at once. And work out what to put in each quarter. So let's start in the top left quarter. I don't know why I always start there. It's probably because I'm left-handed. I'm not sure. But anyway, that's what happens for me. Now I can see in the top left quarter here, the horizon line sits at about a third, maybe just under halfway up inside this quarter. Okay, so if that's my halfway line, then I'm going to say my horizon's about there. So I'm just going to draw a little line across there to indicate my horizon. Okay. When you're doing a landscape or something like this, it's always good to consider where the horizon line sits. There's the rule of thirds, which you've probably heard about, and that is to have either 1/3 of sky and 2/3 of earth or water landscape, or the other way around. So it's better to divide your picture into thirds rather than halves. If you have your horizon line on your halfway line, sometimes it looks a little bit too even or contrived. So just remember that when you're constructing a picture, if you want to move things, move your horizon line up a little bit sometimes or down, give yourself more or less sky. That'll help your picture look a little bit more interesting. Okay, so I've taken that line all the way across to the middle, but it doesn't actually go that far over here. So it's slightly more than halfway over onto the right-hand side. So put a mark there, say it's about here. And this is where this tree line begins. So now we can just do this wiggly shape like this. You went too high there. Something like that to indicate your trees. Okay. Now the other thing we've got to look at is the line of the river. So we need to get those shapes in there as well. So if you look at the river, and you can see that it begins just below the horizon line and where the tree line meet. So we have a little line coming across here, and then it comes around and wiggles across to there, something like that. We're just doing this loosely. This is to get familiar with the picture, so that next time we draw it, we'll have a better idea of where everything sits. So that's the river on the left-hand edge. And then the right-hand edge of the river, it comes off at this point here on this grid line. It just comes off through about there. So then we can do this lovely arc like that. So you can see that shape now. We've got this interesting little, it's probably a bit too hard, but this little curved area here, which is the side of the river in front of the trees. And on the left, we've got our wiggly line, which is the edge of the river, and that's going off into the bank. Now over here as well, we can see there's a little bit of bank there as well. So we'll just put a mark in there to indicate where the trees start and finish. Okay. That will do for that section. We've got our basic lines in there. So then we can move across to our top right quarter. I'll just put this under my page so I can see it. If you want to hide the other quarters, that's often a good option too. Then you don't get distracted by what's around it. So on this side, we've got the tree line that goes across like that. So we're just going to do a little wiggly line into the sky, something like that. Keep your mark quite light so that you can, remove it or change it if you need to. Now we can look at there's a horizon line through here. I don't know if you can see it on your picture, but there's a line that runs across through there and it meets up over here. So if we mark it across here, that gives us a bit of the bank and where some of the trees are starting to come out. So it's a bit hard to see because it's quite dark. If you have your picture up on a screen or another device near you, then you should be able to see it a little bit more clearly than what you can see in the print, or my print anyway. All right, and then we can look at the side of the river and where that comes down to inside this next quarter. So we can kind of continue that down through there like that. So that's basically our main shapes across the top of the picture. Okay, when you're doing landscapes, you can actually break it up into lots of sections of shapes. It's really quite fun. All right, so then we'll move down into this bottom right-hand quarter. And what I can see, the riverbank, which we've already put in, on the other bottom left section here of this quarter, you can see there's a little bit of the riverbank that's in the foreground. So we can do that shape through there like that. And that's basically the whole river. Now we've also got some reflections of the trees. So we can just do these soft little marks like this. Just keep your charcoal quite light. Soft little marks. Something like that, just to indicate the reflections. And there's a bit of grass over here as well. So we can do some soft grassy sort of marks just to indicate grass. Don't get too caught up in the detail at this stage. We want to keep this really simple and easy to do. All right, so we're just going to now move over to that bottom left quarter and finish off drawing up all the dots. So you can see now that this side of the river wiggles down from this point to this point. So we can do our little shape down through here. Something like that. So on this left-hand side, we've got quite a large triangle shape of foreground sand or dirt. And then we've got this big wide river. So interesting, when you break it into quarters, you can sort of see which segments of the picture sit where. So this bottom left quarter is made up of mostly dirt and water. Top one is made up of sky and a little bit of dirt and water and trees. So we've got a bit of a mix in there. Top right quarter is mostly trees and sky. And then the bottom right quarter is mostly water. Isn't that interesting? So when you get your head around that and you understand that that's what's happening, then you can really start to look at your picture and work out, or remember anyway, when you're drawing it up, what goes into which area. And that really helps you as you move forward into your painting. So I'm just putting some grassy marks through here to remind myself that these weeds or trees or shrubs or whatever they are all growing up around this area. And then we've got a bit of grass on the left-hand side as well. So some stuff happening through here. So that's a lovely soft sort of frame for this picture. I do like doing grasses. They soften things off and they're quite lovely to look at. And we can come back up now and start to just shade in a little bit of the detail. So I don't want to spend too much time in here because I think the pastel version is going to take us a bit longer than usual. So I just want to make sure that we don't, have too much time here so we can get stuck into the real thing, because that's way more exciting, I think. So just marking in grasses. Remember that little horizon line we put across the top at the back there? Just give that a little wiggly edge. So we've got some little trees happening through there. So I'm literally just running my bit of charcoal across the page. Little wiggly edge like that. Just to soften that off. And then there's grass and things up around there. We've got beautiful water. So the water's reflecting the sky. So there's lots of yummy blues here, which is really exciting. And then we've got all these dark reflections that come down through here. So just shading in the reflections in the water. I'll show you how to do reflections afterwards if you don't know yet. Love doing reflections. It's a lot of pulling and pushing. Then we've got all that beautiful big tree line, which is quite dark, isn't it? So we can darken that off. This is where you might pick up your short fat stick of charcoal and just start to sort of zhoosh it around like that. Just means you can fill up more area quickly if you've got a wider bit. Got a bit of cloud up in the sky. We can softly wipe some cloud across through there. And then this land on the right-hand side of the river is also fairly dark, mid to dark tones. There's a tree here. It's a lovely tree. We can highlight him later on. A little bit of Australian grey or something like that to give that tree trunk a bit of emphasis in amongst all the foliage. There's some grassy stuff happening on the bank of the river like this. So just a bit of a play and look at the tones. This is really important. The tone is the thing that makes your painting more interesting. It gives it depth, it gives it life. And even if we painted this in all different blues or oranges or something, as long as we did it in the right tones, it would still work. I'd like to do that one day actually. Just paint something in completely different colours, but rely on tone. Yes, just running through there, darkening all of that off a little bit. And then just in these reflections, I'm just going to smudge them a bit so that they soften off a little bit in the water. literally just rubbing my finger very softly up and down like that. And then I can come down and just pull my charcoal down like this, and it gives me that sort of long, elongated, reflected effect. We probably would have to spend a lot more time getting that perfect if we were going to stay with charcoal. So sorry about my voice. If it gets too hard to hear me, just let me know. Reschedule or something. Okay. Lovely. And there's a bit of reflection up there as well. So I just wanted to make that a quick little exercise. Oh, I better darken this up a little bit too, because it's got a fair bit of mid-tone in there. And noticing now where the light is. So the lightest parts of the picture are up in the sky. So obviously the clouds and the light blue sky. And then of course we've got that beautiful same colours down here in the water. So if you have an eraser nearby, you can take out your grid lines if they're still showing. So looking at that black and white version, you can see this area here will be our lightest, as well as the sky. Our darkest darks are over here amongst the trees. So down through there, and then in amongst all the foliage, it's quite dark. There's also a lot of dark through the reflections around here in the river. And I'm sure we'll find more darks as we go. Down here in the grassy area is quite dark. You can see there's a little ridge there in that sand or bank. So that makes it just a bit more interesting, doesn't it, than a flat, straight bank. Gives us a little bit more contour and shape to keep the picture more interesting. So once you've done it in charcoal, then you can sort of analyse the picture and work out where the lights and the darks sit. Perfect. So let's move over onto the colour version, and then we'll discuss colours. All right, so these are the colours that I picked out for today's painting. I think pretty sure I sent them through to you. There's quite a lot, which is more than what I normally would pick out to begin with, but landscapes are quite complex. So let's start with what we've got. I've tried to do them in the order of light to dark. Didn't quite work, did it? Anyway, we could say that this top section up here is all the lightest areas. So that'll be the sky and the water. So I've got a very light blue and a sky blue. There's a lilac, which has got that lovely purpley tinge to it, which is beautiful in clouds. Then the pink. So there's a very soft pink up in the clouds as well. And this blue up in those clouds at the very top. So what I was thinking was these clouds up here, top right, will probably have a little bit of that blue in. There's a lot of that down here in the water as well. It's a beautiful, vibrant blue. So it's going to bring that water alive. Okay. And then down here, I've got my blue violet, which is my favorite dark. Where's that gone? Oh, this one. So this is a really good color to have in your box at all times. I use it instead of black where I can, because it's dark but it's still warm and it doesn't look too heavy. Sometimes you need black for drama, but I always save my black for last, just like I save white for last. So blue violet is good for the darks under the trees. Terracotta for my earth colours. And then I've got a dark orange, again, from my earth colours, a mid-green warm, and a mid-green cool, a yellow green, and a dark green. Now, let me tell you right now, you will not have enough greens. We never do. So I've just limited that to 1, 2, 3, 4 greens, but I'll probably end up with about 20. But anyway, it's good to start somewhere, isn't it? And you never know, but yeah, maybe we'll have enough. We'll see how we go. And then grey. Why did I pick up grey? I don't know. But anyway, grey it is. Maybe, oh, that's why, for the tree trunks and tree, yeah, through there. Just to add, those little white or grey lines that you see in amongst the tree foliage, that tells us that there are trees there. So that's what the grey's for. So if you've got all those colours sorted out already, fantastic. It's really good to be prepared in advance. And as I mentioned earlier, or in other classes, I always like to keep them in a separate container so that I know what my palette is for this painting. So if you don't get it finished today, you can come back tomorrow and everything's already there. So you haven't got to try and remember what pink you had or what blue. So that's got to be a great tip, I reckon. The other cool thing I've been doing lately is cleaning them off. So once I finish a painting, I put them into my rice powder and give everything a shake, and they all come up really beautiful and clean, and then I can put them back into my palette. And that way they're easier to see when I'm looking for colours next time. All right, so there are colours, and just put those aside. Got my little hand towel here. I'm going to go and wet one end. So I just use old towels, cut them in half or something. Wet one end so you can keep your fingers clean, keep drying, wiping them and then drying them off at the end of the towel. I'm going to put my charcoal back in here, my eraser in there, and you'll need a little board with your paper on it. So I'll just get that over here. Here's what I prepared earlier. Just going to get it all to sit in the right spot. There we go. Lovely. Now, I won't show the reference picture on screen because you should have your own one there. So if it's on your notes or on another screen, then that's the perfect place to put it. All right. I will obviously be referring to it, but it just won't be on the screen. And I've got all my colours here, so then I can grab those as I need to. So let's rule up our page and get our line drawing in for this landscape. So we've just literally just done that in charcoal. Use your charcoal pencil again. I did mention in the notes that the colour paper, good colours would be terracotta green, dark green, dark blue, purple or black. So I found a green. It's not my favourite colour to paint on. I don't use it very often, so I'll use that up today. So when you're filling in a whole page, it doesn't matter very much. I don't think it does anyway. It depends on your style of painting. If you're a pastelist who doesn't blend and likes to leave your marks quite loose and let the under colour show through, then it does matter what you choose. But when you're doing something like we are today that requires a lot of blending and pushing the colour into the paper, it doesn't really matter what colour. I just find it sort of supports the colours you choose rather than enhances because of the way I paint. Now, the way I paint isn't the only way, so there are lots of different ways you can apply pastel, and everyone will discover their own style and the way they like to work. I've tried to be loose, but I just can't do it. So it's a personal thing. All right, just have a sip of this hot tea. It's better. All right, so we're going to draw this up again. So you'll need your reference picture and your grid marks so you can see where everything sits. So once again, let's start with where the horizon line is. And it's a bit lower than halfway. So halfway in this quarter is there. I'm going to say maybe about there. and just do this little wiggly line across like that. That's my tree line. Use charcoal because it's easy to get off later if you want to get it off, or go over it with pastel. Okay, and then come across to here, and we can see the tree line on the other side comes higher and then down to here. So it meets at about just past halfway, so say about there. So then we can do our tree line up like this to there. Okay, and then we've got the river. So the river comes around and crosses the line about there. And then we've got the other bank of the river. So the river kind of goes into a little point just up here beyond those trees, doesn't it? It goes around the corner. And that's what's nice about this, because it makes you wonder what's around the corner. Okay, and then we'll draw the other side of the river through here. So there are basic lines for that top quarter. Then we can move across to this top quarter. We can continue the line of the river down into there. So it just goes out of that quarter down into the bottom right quarter, about that far down inside that grid. Then we can continue our tree line. So our tree line gets a little bit taller and maybe a bit more sparse as it goes across here. Okay. What's the first thing you think we're going to do when we start to put colour down? Sky, because the sky's at the back. We want to get all this sky in first, and we can stick stuff over the top of it. Much easier that way. All right, and then we've got to find that little horizon line again, which is not terribly straight. Sort of goes a bit like that of that tree line. Not that it matters terribly much, but there's a lot of sort of orangey, yellow, earthy colour through there. And then beyond that, it's quite dark, and that's where all the little trees are in there. And there's a lot of shadow and darkness under there. But this is all grassy, sort of terracotta-ish yellow colours. So I've got to remember that's dirt or grass. This is tree line.
Jeannie, can I just say something?
Yes, please.
When you say the horizon line, you know how you're joining that at the top quarter.
Yeah.
To me, that looks like must be just the way I'm looking at it. But the horizon line at the back is higher than the horizon line where that actual dirt comes out. It seems to come below. That's
here.
Yeah, just there. I'm just looking at that. Like in the front, you know how it comes down, it appears to come down lower, and then it goes, sweeps up at the back. Yeah, I've just.
Yeah, okay. Yep, I agree.
No, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying in the way I'm looking at it, I just feel, I've put it in wrong, I think.
Oh, no.
That's all right. I can fix it. Yep. It's just
it's my language. That's what it is, I think. I've said horizon line, and I've used in two areas where they don't match.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's what I meant. Because I thought I can't see how that in the front matches the back, but
no, it doesn't.
Okay, that's okay.
Yeah, because
that's is just the visual line on the bottom one.
Yeah, sorry.
No, that's okay.
Yeah, the tree line. Let's call it the tree line across here.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's all right. Thank you for telling me. No, that's good, because I do say that, you know, a word,
that's
and
right.
It makes sense to me, but it might not make sense to you.
It makes sense now. Thank you.
No worries. All right, so the tree line, and then the horizon line's that furthest one all the way at the back up there. That's much further away too than this area. So we've got to remember that. That's why it's all smaller back there on the left, and everything here on the right-hand side on the bank and the trees are bigger. So it's closer to us. All right, so we'll carry on. Bring that edge down through here. Okay, and then back down into this bottom quarter now. So then we can begin to put in this bank of the river through here. And then that little line sort of goes through here. There's like a dip down there, isn't there, inside this area here. That's where the grasses are growing down on that ridge. So it's almost like it's a step down. And then we've got, so that comes around to about there-ish. And then we can see grasses through here. So just indicate those lightly. So not too much, because we don't want to get too much dirty charcoal in our water. So you've got to think ahead now. I don't want to put too much dark down in here, because when I put my blue and my white to get the beautiful bright water, I don't want to have too much black or dark through there. So just think ahead when you're doing this, because you don't want to contaminate your pastels or your colours as you go. Okay. And then we've got this little angle through here, and then all this stuff sort of just wiggles around up to there. So that's basically the edge of the river. So we've got our picture broken up into all these segments. We've got water, earth, trees, sky, basically. So that's all we need to do at this point with the charcoal. Just needed to get those main shapes in there so that we can now start getting some colour on and building this up. So like I said earlier, the first thing we're going to do is sky. So I know we normally stop for a break, but we might go until about maybe 10, and then we'll stop for a break, and then we'll come back if that's okay. So first off, I'm going to wet my little towel, which I haven't done yet. So I'll just dip that in my water. So just a little towel, wet it on one end. Just, oops, just wet my page. So then you can clean your fingers off on the wet side, dry them on the dry side. Okay, so that's handy to have next to you on your table or somewhere nearby. Don't put it on your painting though, otherwise you're going to make it all wet. Speaking of which, it's okay to get a bit of water on this paper. It will take some water. So lovely for washing in pastel or doing under paintings. Works really beautiful. And I'll show you, I might do that next week actually. I'll give you a little sample of washing it in and how you can reuse your paper. Right, so let's have a look at some colours. What have we got in this sky? We've got our pale blue, and we've got a bit of pink, we've got a bit of mauve, and this dark blue. Not sure whether I'll throw that one in as well. I might and I might not. We'll see what it looks like. So they're my sky colours. All right, so let's see. I'm going to put my pale blue down first because I can see that that's sort of the lightest colour. I'm just going to sweep it over the whole sky and push it all in. So that's what I'm going to do. That's the goal at this point, is to get this sky filled in with pale blue, blend it all in beautifully, and then we can start to bring some clouds over the top. All right, so hold your pastel on its side. So if you've got a piece about my size, that's a decent size, or in a little bit shorter is fine. If they're a long stick like this that you haven't broken or unwrapped, then you might want to break it in half or a third. I just find sticks that long, they're good for using like this to draw with, but if you want to fill in areas, then they're not. So you need to break them so you can lie them flat on your paper and pull it across like this. Make sure you cover up that tree line, because when we do put our trees in, we still want to show some sky behind the trees, okay? So don't be afraid of covering up that tree line. We can pop them in over the top of the sky later. You don't want to have halos or gaps around where the trees and the sky meet. So just get a bit of blue on there, and then choose a couple of fingers and make sure they're reasonably clean. And I'm going to pull them across like this. So I like to do these wide sort of blending movements with my fingers because the sky's wide. So I always try and move my fingers in the direction of the thing that I'm painting. So if it's a big wide blue sky, I do big wide movements. It looks nearly white, doesn't it? There we go. Lovely. we'll treat this as white. No, white. Didn't pick up white. Silly Billy. I had to go and get white. Or maybe it was going to do. Anyway, it doesn't matter. I'm talking to myself now. All right. So now we've got our bit of blue on there. Now I'm going to pick up my other blue, which is my mid sky blue. And just lightly, where you can see the darker blue color, just zhoosh that around lightly. So just softly, softly. Like that. I can see that darker blue sweeping all the way across nearly to the end. And then there's a smidge of it just through here as well. We're building up layers. So when you're working in pastel, and you're a blender like me and you're doing it in this style, we're building up our layers. So this is just another layer over my pale blue. Once we've got that on there, then I want you to grab your one finger and just softly, softly push it in and pull it in the direction of the cloud. So there's nice wide sort of marks running horizontal across your sky. Drifting that through there. And nothing. See how that's starting to come alive already? Now, we've got a bit of purple in there. I don't like using too much violet in my skies because it does sometimes make it look a bit stormy, but I can see a teeny. So let's just pop a little bit in there. It's lovely for shadows. So we'll just make a bit of shadow through there. Not too much, don't overdo it. Just want a tiny bit. And again, pushing that in. Nice and straight. Subtle, very soft. You got to kind of decide when you're painting with pastels, do I go soft and gentle or do I go in hard? I try to start off nice and soft. Okay, bit of pink. So I'm just going to zhoosh pink around in here. I will have to go and pick up some white because I didn't put white on the list. Sorry. Okay, and again, just blending that in softly. Pink and blue make purple anyway, so it's going to create a really nice sort of glow. Beautiful. So they look like lovely windswept sort of wispy clouds off in the distance, halfway. And then we'll go and get some white and give it some zing back in a minute. Not even a minute. Okay, I think that's white. I've got so many whites, some of them are just off. That looks pretty white to me. Even a very pale lemon might be quite nice. So just going to zhoosh a bit of my white through here. And I'm pressing pretty hard because it's a hard pastel. It's not a lovely, not a soft schminky, which I never seem to have enough of. If you can only afford one schminky, because they're about $10 each, get a white one. The white schminkies are beautiful, especially for putting on at the end just to get your highlights. Okay, so a bit of white on the tops of those clouds. You can put little wispy ones around over here on the right. Then now, instead of pulling that across, because I want to keep that fluffiness about it, excuse me a second. Sorry, I had to clear my throat. Just do these little fluffy sort of movements with your finger. So I'm pressing really softly. So what's that's doing is creating these lovely fluffy cloud shapes. It's picking up some of the other colors that are underneath already and creating a really soft effect. So just do that. Just run your finger across. I'm not lifting it off the page, so keep your finger on the page and just do these little soft, fluffy, curly sort of movements as you go across. And hopefully that'll start to look a bit cloudy. On the top right, similar sort of thing, just keep your finger on the page and don't press too hard. If you press hard, it'll get lost in the colours that are already there and you might feel like you need to add more, which you can do. So I feel like that has got a bit lost in there and I need to get the white to look white. To get the white to look white, you need to get a bit more dark around it. Does that make sense? So whenever you're looking for something to be lighter, make sure there's dark around it. You can't get things to look lighter if there's not enough dark. So I'm just going to pop a bit more of this blue in here because I want to create slightly more interest in the sky. And again, just pulling that around softly. Clouds take a while to do. I don't know if you saw that picture behind me when we had the other screen on, but I've just finished a big landscape and it's mainly sky, crazy clouds. It took me ages, but it was so much fun. Okay, and then a bit more dark up here. Top right is a bit darker again, isn't it? So again, you can just keep adding a bit more and a bit more until you get it to the right tone. Okay, so don't be afraid to just go in lightly. I like to start lightly because then I can back off if I need to, rather than going in heavy to begin with and then feeling like you need to remove some of it. And there's a few little dark areas just around these clouds through here. So pulling that around like that. Really lovely. And then if you wanted to, you could come back over with white again. And this is where we stop blending so much. Once you've built up enough to, create a nice sort of background, then you can stop blending and just let the pastels do the work. So this is when you start to zhuzh a little bit with your pastel and just let the texture work for you and create those beautiful shiny bits on the clouds. So lovely, lovely. Zhuzhing through there. There we are. And again, have another look. Make sure you might want to add a bit more pink. I feel like I need to touch more pink through there. And soft, just very soft, push that around and create like little clouds. Come back again with your white. This is beautiful because you can keep coming back over the top with your white to get the shine back in there. So you know I like to leave my white for last because I want to try and create that beautiful glow that the whites give me. Put a bit more of it over in here too. And I'm just going to grab this other dark blue. See what happens. I'm just going to softly put some of that there. Just want to see if it's going to be a bit too much because that's in the river reflections. So I just want to have a little bit of it in the sky as well. Just pushing that around softly, softly. And then there's also, what I've done, I've been looking at the printout of my reference picture, which is a terrible print. I mean, really, it's got stripes in it. It's pretty terrible. So I've been looking at that and going, oh yeah, no, that's not that dark. But then when I look at the picture on the screen next to me, the sky is quite dark up there in that top area. So make sure you're looking at your reference picture on different devices or something, but you know, don't just rely on a home printer because they're not very good. There we are. I think I might leave that there as is. Don't need any more. It's a bit more purple. There's a bit of purple in there. So you can literally make your sky be anything. Just remember, it's got to be reflected in the water. Okay, so we need to make sure that we replicate those colours when we get down to the water. So keep them handy. Don't put them back in your box or anywhere. They need to hang around for a bit longer. All right. So I reckon that'll probably do for sky for now. I'm just going to tip the dust off my board because I'm working flat. So when I'm working flat, the dust also congeals in the painting. If you're on an easel, it's a lot better because the dust will just drop down into your tray. You don't have to worry about it. It's a bit trickier when you're working flat. All right, beautiful. Well, I think that's looking pretty nice. I just looked over at that other picture now and see, oh, it's the pink in there. So this is what happens, you see. Keep checking. All right, let's take a 10-minute break and we'll come back at 10 o'clock and continue on. If you want to continue on without me, that's absolutely fine too. If you feel confident and you want to get started, you could start to block in all of the earthy colours, block in some of the river colours. Yeah, go for it. Otherwise, I'll see you back here in 10 minutes. Okay, so we're back and now we can get started on our trees and the back area. So what I like to do when I'm working on a landscape is I like to start at the back or the top usually and work down or towards the front. So I just find it's easier to do all your background things first and then you can start to bring things forward and work on top of everything. So that's what we'll do. So I've got the sky in. I'm not loving my sky terribly much, but the thing is I can come back and do a bit more on it if I need to, because looking at the picture, there's not a lot of interruptions around the sky. So if I want to come back and touch up these clouds later on, I can do that because there's nothing in front of them other than what's below there. So think about that when you're working out the strategy for how you're going to tackle your painting, because that really matters. Let's pick up our darkest green. So what we're going to do now is just start to block in some of our darkest areas. And before I even think about doing that, I'm going to peel this plastic label off. These plastic labels are the worst. I think Art Spectrum have now started doing paper labels, which is much more friendly for the environment. And oh, there we go, just fell off there. This is my blue violet and this is my darkest green. I'm going to go to the blue violet. That's my darkest color. So what I like to do is block in my darks. I've just dropped that in the middle of, oh good, there's reflection there, so that won't matter too much. I was going to say I just dropped that in the middle of my blue water. Grab your piece of blue violet and we're just going to darken off all through here. Now don't go up into the sky, just pull it across this area here because this is where it's quite dark in amongst the bottoms of the trees there. Okay, don't go into the sky yet. So leave a bit of a gap there where we can put the next greens and take the trees up into the sky. Right, so I just want to get a bit of dark through there. Now there's also some, it's not quite as dark, but there's a little bit of dark across that horizon line on the left side there. So I'm just going to put a zhoosh of it across the back there. And then I can put my darker green in as well. Okay, so that's all my darks. Where else do I have some dark? Down in the water, but I'm not going to do that just yet. We'll save the water for later. So now you've got your dark on there. Just give it a little blend. Start to push it in. Doesn't matter if it spreads out a bit. Just try really hard not to get too much up into your sky area. What we want to do is push this in, so we're creating a really good basic foundation or underpainting we can build on top of. And again, over here on that left-hand horizon, just softly pushing that across as well. We'll probably need this colour in other places, but that's a good spot to start. I'm just going to tip my dust off. Okay, so that's a nice dark start, beautiful. Next, I can see there's a fair bit of red earth over here. So I want to get some of that blocked in now. So just looking at your picture, working out where that red coloured dirt is in that landscape. Okay. And then what have we got here in the foreground? It's kind of more, not quite as red as that, is it? I'm going to throw some red down anyway.
What colour are you using?
I called that terracotta, so it's this terracotta colour.
Looks pink on my computer.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Pink? Wow.
It looks a pinky colour. Okay, I'll go for a terracotta. Yep.
Okay. I guess this got a reddish pinky base. Yeah. Yeah. This is just the first layer. That don't stress too much, because we're going to get all the basic layers down first, and then we'll do the detail. So I don't know if you've seen that. I've just noticed that when I tipped my dust off, it all went into my sky, which is really annoying. But anyway, I have to clean that up later. So I've got black dust sitting in my sky. Try really hard not to stick your fingers in there, because it's just going to push it in and make it all dirty. So I'm going to leave it there for now. Using the terracotta colour, I'm just going to put some of that around on the riverbank on the left side. So blocking in that riverbank colour through here. We've got that other orangey colour as well that we can add into here and give it some nice contour. There we go. Pushing it through there. It's nice, isn't it? So that gives us a nice idea of where everything sits within, losing my words, with colour. Now, remember I mentioned this orange colour a second ago, so I can see a bit of that as well. So let's throw a bit of that in over this one, in just in a couple of spots where it looks to me to be a little bit maybe lighter, brighter. This area here in the foreground, because that looks like we're on a ridge and we're looking down, so it's sort of, the ridge area is kind of like that shape there, I think. So I've made that a little bit lighter. And then down below that, it's going to be a bit darker. It'll have all the grasses and things in there, but I reckon that's a bit darker down through there, because it's beyond where we're looking from. So where we're looking from is a bit lighter. So now we're just going to push in some of this colour. Okay, so I'm using 3 fingers because it's a large area. As if you were painting with a brush. If you pick up a big brush, then you can fill up more area with a big brush, which to me is like having 3 fingers in there. So just pushing it all in, making it stick. And then on the other side as well, just pushing it in here. If you get your blue violet and your terracotta mixed up together, don't worry about it. It's fine. That'll make lovely shadows. In fact, may as well make some really nice shadows. Just blend them together a little bit. That's a bit yummy, isn't it? And then if you've got a bit of dark on your fingers, you can come over here and put a bit more darkish tones through there. So always think about that too. Look, your fingers are a brush. Brushes and fingers hold onto colour or pigment when we're doing this. So then you can put it somewhere else. Sometimes, most of the time I do that accidentally and then end up with a big mess, but sometimes it works out quite nicely. And you can get some really subtle shading and tones happening that way. All right, beautiful. So now let's pop some colour into the water and then we'll start working on the detail. So I'm excited about the water. This blue is just so yummy. So this is, what blue is this? Not sure. I can't remember names of colours. I just know they look nice. That's delicious. So I'm going to put some of that through here. Put all of it through here. Just ignore the reflection at the moment. We can pop that over the top after. And then as we get up towards the mouth or the other end of the river, it gets lighter because it's reflecting the sky. So I'm putting some of my light blue down in. Again, just ignore the reflections, merging them together a little bit. A bit of this blue in as well. And a smudge of pink. A bit of pink runs across that to indicate the clouds. So you just want to get one layer of colour down on there, and then we can blend in again. So again, you might want to use 3 fingers. Hopefully you didn't put dirty fingers in here. If you did, doesn't matter. You can always put more blue over the top. And I'm literally just pushing this around. I'm not too worried at this stage about getting everything in the right, or, perfect, because this is the first layer. So we'll come back later and refine it. Get all those beautiful reflections in later. Just filling up our page now, getting a nice foundation of colour down so that we've got something to start with. Lovely. And when you mix your blue and your orange, because they're complementary colours, so when we mix them, so we mix this with blue, going to make beautiful muddy browns. Okay, so don't be afraid of mixing them to create these really beautiful earthy brown colours, because that's delicious. And I can see a lot of that kind of colour in through here. So we might use some of that blue to create some tone and shadows in our earth. So your complementaries always make mud when they're blended, always sing when they're sitting next to each other. Alrighty, so as I mentioned before, we'll start from the back and work forward, or basically just tip off the dust. Notice I'm tipping it the other way now, so it doesn't go up into my sky. All right, so we'll start back here, right back there on that far horizon line. You can see there's a little row of trees, so they're far, far away. And then it comes forward and there's a scattering of foliage down through this area here. And then it goes off the page, and then we've got the earth underneath it. So let's put some earth in there again, a bit more of the terracotta ready sort of colour, just so I've got some more pigment on the paper that I can mix and play with. Softly, softly, and then just pushing that in gently, gently. I just wanted to make it a little bit richer. Now I'm going to pick up my dark green. So this is the darkest green. It is this one there. looks nearly black. You might not have anything that dark. If you haven't, then you might want to try using your blue violet or a very dark blue. If you've got a blue violet is good because you can use that again over here to get your horizon line in. It's also very crummy. Made all that dirty. Okay, so a dark green if you've got one. And we'll just do little wiggly lines like this to indicate a tree line that's far, far away. Far, far away. It doesn't have much detail. We can't see it from here because it's all the way over there. So I've got a bit of dark green on there, and I'm just going to keep that for a minute. And I'm just going to zhoosh a little bit more of it around through here. So you can see there's some trees and shrubs and bits and bobs coming around in that corner there. Okay. Now I'm going to grab the other green, which is this next darkest green. I called it mid green. And zhoosh a little bit of that around. So I'm trying to sort of create a bit of tone here. A little bit of dark and light. Not too light though, because it's so far away. I'm going to try and keep it fairly neutral and not too bright because it's off in the distance. So just trying to create a little bit of variation in our greens there. Tipping off the dust again. Now it's all gone into the water. You can grab another green if you wish, like the next lightest one, and just do a few little spots of that. It might be a little bit too light, maybe. Could be a bit too light. Just going to dab it in with my finger. Push, 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 not blend. So then it's sort of sitting on the top, but it's blended in softly. Okay. And then I can come back over with my dark green again. Just get a bit more dark happening through there. And that gives me the impression that there's some nice trees back there. There is a tallish one I can see. It's a bit blurry, but it's sort of around about there. It's got a light little trunk on it. So if you want to do that, then do that. I'm not loving it, so I'm going to get rid of it. You're the editor here. You get to edit the picture. If you don't like something, remove it or change it or replace it. So that section there, you could call pretty much done. I'm just going to come back over now with my terracotta pinky colour and just do a bit more zhooshing because I want to make sure that that area, that I don't want to have to come back into there and do stuff. I'm going to get it done now and then we can move on. Now in that foreground, or sorry, the river bank, so the bit that goes into the river, there's a fair bit of shadow and dark through there and a little bit running through there. So I picked up my blue violet and I've just put a little bit of a few little light marks through there and an edge around where it's coming into the water. This is going to mess my water up a bit, but that's okay. We can clean it later. Tipping off dust. Those blue violet pastels are so dusty. Okay, now softly, softly, just pushing some of this in to my earth just gives it a bit more contour, doesn't it? It doesn't look smooth. We want it to look bumpy and lumpy and natural. And then on the edges of the water, I'm going to just do a bit of a shadow and pull it in towards the earth. So even though I drew a very soft sort of smudgy line down through the edge of the water, what I'm doing now is I'm getting my finger, and I'll show you on an example. So I've done something like this around the edges of the water, and it's going into this terracotta colour. So what I'm doing is I'm getting my my ring finger and pulling it across like that so that it's merging into the dirt and leaving a kind of a shadowy edge along the waterline there. That will hopefully make it look sort of wet and give it some definition and a bit of contour. So that's what I'm trying to do. I think it's working so far. Seems to be working all right. And I need to just darken off at the back there as well. Okay, we'll come and we'll fix the water later. So if your water's getting a bit dirty, don't stress. So I think that looks okay. Now, the other thing you want to think about, we'll come around to this side here, is that there's bits of the dirt that sort of jut out into the water. So it's not a smooth edge. It's got lots of jagged sort of bits and pieces that come out into the water. So you want to make sure you get those edges happening through there, and a bit more of this red pastel on the paper. And we'll do a similar thing as we come around with blue violet. Okay. So just want to make sure you get these edges nice, natural looking, so that they all don't have the same shape. We've got to be a little bit rugged, I guess is a good word. Okay. And again, coming in, I'm going to try blue actually. Let's see what happens if we do it with blue. It might not be dark enough, but we can see. And this is what you can do. You can try different colours. And then if they're not enough, you can always go dark or lighter. It's easier to go darker than it is to go light. Oh, like that. It looks quite nice in the orange. Okay, so putting some of that around the edges. Just a smidge here and there. Okay. And then same sort of thing, just gently pushing it in and pulling it across to get that watery, wet sort of effect. Might be a bit too blue, too bright. And this is what you can, this is why I like to sort of not go straight to my darkest darks, but try something else before you do that. And then if you think, oh no, it's got to be a bit darker, then you can go to your dark. And often the two will work really, really nicely. So now I can pick up my dark again, my blue violet, and come back in and darken off some of those spots a bit more. Nice. So I like the way that the edge is working now. It's looking really realistic. And again, I'm just pulling this around softly, softly, pulling it in from the water edge to the dirt. So you're pulling it in that direction so that it merges with the dirt. Lovely. Lovely, lovely. All right, so we'll leave this bit till later. I want to get over into this section now and start building some trees and some dirt underneath them. So because the trees are on top of the dirt, we need to put the dirt down first. Does that make sense? Because then we can add the trees over the top and the earth is already there. So let's get stuck into some trees. Grab your darkest green, if you have one, or your blue violet if you don't. We've already put blue violet here. I'm just going to zhoosh a bit more, of dark green in here now, because I want to get the feeling of this thick, lush tree line. It's running across there. And then we'll put the dirt in at the front. It's just literally just zhooshing it around in tree shapes. So think about the shapes of the trees. I know they get taller as they go across, but I'm not going to put the tall ones in just yet. Just going to start off gently, gently with the first row of trees. And see, I've got over to this section here now, over here, and I thought, oh no, I need to put more sky down in there. Now's the time to do that before you get too much dark or anything else on the paper. Before you have to get in behind the trees, it's much harder to put it in then. So just going to put a bit more a light sky through here. Touch that up, make it nice and thick and yummy. And hopefully that'll be enough. It'll wipe my finger off because it's full of dirty tree colours. Now I've got a clean finger, give it a dry, and I can come in now and softly push the green into the sky. That's what I wanted. Okay, so that's now fixed the sky. Just lighten it a little bit more, and I won't blend this bit, and it can just sit there. Because it is actually quite light right there at the point where the river disappears. So as you go, just tidy up those things because you don't want to have to get in around the trees later. All right, let's get back into the dirt now. So we've got a bit of dirt. I'm going to get all this dirt in first. I'm using my orange terracotta colour, pumpkin colour, whatever you call it. It's nice if you've got a couple of oranges or reddish tones that you can use to create these beautiful Australian outback colours. It's lush. Beautiful. So now I'm going to push some of this in. Push it in different directions, pull a bit of dark down into it. What we want to do is create something with some shadow and shape. So don't be worried about mixing the colours. That's absolutely okay. For this part, I want to kind of close the gap between the dark and the dirt so that we've got a nice sort of shadowy tree line running through there. Can you see how that's getting nice and dark through there? So it's creating a really lovely under tree sort of shadow. Beautiful. And now that's a nice base that we can work on. All right. So basically we've just got to build up all this foliage of trees. Now I can see that grey one go. There it is. We've got, I'm just going to mark these in so you can see what I'm talking about. Got a tree here. It's looking quite gnarly, and then there's a few more branches or trunks, tree trunks and things that run around through here. So I'm just going to mark those in softly. We'll probably lose them all when we come in with the foliage, but at least it'll give us a little bit what I'm doing that for. So feel free to come along with me, is to get the basics of the tree shapes in, the tree trunks and things, and then I'll put the foliage and things over the top. That'll give me some sort of hidden tree trunks that will sort of appear, but they'll disappear in between the foliage. So you want to try and create, you know, a little bit of disappearing of the trees. I think I explained that very, anyway, you'll see what I mean. So just do a bit of that to get some of those in there. And then once I've got some of that in there, I've just seen that there's a fair bit of grass, or I don't know what that is really, shrubs and things along this part of the river. In through there's a fair bit of green, and it kind of actually keeps running all the way up to the bank up here, up to there. So put a bit of your darkest green through there, and then maybe some more of your mid-green as well. So just running that over the top like that. Two greens in there. And then just zhoosh them around with your fingers a little bit to push it all in. We don't want it to be super smooth because this is rough kind of grass and earth and shrubs and things. So you want to, don't push too hard, because the harder you push, the smoother, or the smoother your color becomes, and then it doesn't have any texture or depth. All right, let's go to the trees now. So I'm going to pick up my mid-green. I'm just going to start to zhuzh this around in here. So what I'm doing is I'm doing these little squiggly marks with my pastel. Okay. I'm using it, I use my pastels on the side most of the time, except when I'm doing fine lines like I did for the trees. Then I use the edge, the sharpest edge that I can get for my lines. But doing this, I'm tilting, so I'm holding it flat on the paper, tilting it slightly. So I'm just getting a soft sort of blurry mark, and I'm zhuzhing it around like this. So just zhuzhing to create this feel of foliage. And if it picks up the other greens as it goes, then that's okay too. So just want to try and create a feeling of depth and texture and contour. And as you go, just start to creep up into the sky a little bit, so that you're getting those little bits of green poking up into the sky. And we've got our beautiful darks already down. You can add more dark if you need to. It's getting too light, don't stress, we can always put more dark in. See how that's now starting to look lovely and thick, like foliage. We want to sort of come in over the top of all our little tree trunks that we put in before. So we don't want to cover them all up entirely, but we do want to cover some. So just parts of them are showing through. Doesn't look like a row of sticks. And that's given me a lovely tree line at the back there. So that's lovely. Like that. It's looking good. That's just 2 greens and our blue violets. So see how that works really well to create thick, lush kind of foliage. Little squiggly marks. Change the direction of your marks too. So when you're running around on your paper, don't be doing this, because you'll end up with all the same look. I do this. I just go squiggle, 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 all in different directions, round, up and down, sideways, this way, that way, so that you get a more natural look for your trees. If you're doing these ones, you're going to end up making a fence, something that doesn't look natural. So keep your pastel on the page. Keep it on the page. Don't lift it up, but just vary the pressure. So on the page, pressing a bit harder where you want it darker, and then lifting off where you want it to be lighter. And that will create a really lovely natural look of foliage. And while you're doing that over the top of your darker greens, your other colours, it's picking up the other stuff underneath as well. So that's creating a really nice combination. So that's the secret. You've got to keep the pastel on the page. And even if you're hardly touching it, just lift and push, squiggle, 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 like that. And that'll give you a beautiful, lush foliage. For distance foliage, it's really good. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to my dark green. I'm just going to tip off the dust again. So my dark green, what I need to do now is get some of these trees up into the skyline. So if you look at your picture, you can see some of those trees, like the tallest one comes to about there. And then we've got this one over here that's quite tall. This one over here. So there's one there that's quite tall. And then there's another one there. And then they kind of taper down a bit, don't they? So there's another one about that tall. So you've got to kind of work out where everything is and the heights of things. So if we leave it looking flat like that, it's a bit boring. So we've got to bring those trees up into the sky. And as we do that, that's going to bring them forward as well, because we're going to give them a little bit more detail. Excuse me, please. All right. So I've got my darkest green, and I'm just going to do these now when we're not staying on the paper, okay, because we want to let some of the sky show through. So I'm doing these little dotty marks, and they're all supposed to be looking a little bit different. So if they're not looking different and they're all looking the same, just try to twist the pastel around in your hand to get it to use a different side or something like that to create variation in your shapes. Right? So it takes a bit of practice. And then I'm just going to come down, keep doing the same thing, because now we're coming down into the foreground of this area. And the trees are sitting in front of that other row of trees at the back that we've just done. So we've got to bring it forward like that, and that's bringing it into the closer to us, basically. So see how we've got to leave some sky holes there? So just carry on doing that and notice where they sit in your picture. Keep checking your picture and how they go from tall on the right all the way down to that height over here that we did in the start. Okay, so just getting those beautiful trees all happening down through here. As they get more towards the mouth of the river, or the end of the river, they're not as tall, so you can't see as much sky through them. Getting a little bit more dense and thick, aren't they? So see how that's happening with the sky holes? But sky holes are, you know, the bits of sky you can see through a tree. And sometimes we fill it up too much and you need to get more blue in somewhere. So you can, as long as you've got your sky colour handy, I'll show you. You can actually come in with your light blue, if it's the light blue there, and you can put these back in later. So if it gets too full and you want to get more sky holes through, you can actually touch them up later on. Or you can try to avoid that and do it this way. But often, yeah, we just need to do that. The other thing to be aware of, I've just noticed I've done it, is keeping the shapes different. So try not to have all the same shapes of the tops of your trees. They're all different. They all vary. And they're not exactly the same. So we've got to try and keep them looking natural and different shapes. Made all of mine into Christmas trees. It's not what they are. Because we're human, we make patterns. And it's just, yeah, just the way we roll, isn't it, really? The best thing to do is try to look at the reference picture and the shapes that you can see in that, and do what that does, do what that's telling you. Okay, so just using that lovely dark green to come around, get these beautiful tree shapes in there. I've lost my tree at this end. So if you've lost your tree too, you might want to just mark in that tree trunk a little bit more. This is probably the most defined tree here on the far right. So I do want to get it sort of back in a little bit if I can, just so that it's looking, you know, a bit closer to us. So just marking in a little bit more of that for me. Good. Yeah. Just always noticing these things, because the wonderful thing about pastels is you can come back and touch stuff up as you go. You don't have to wait for anything to dry or set. So it's quite good. All right, so I've got that sort of happening in there, which is nice again. And I come back over with my green. So then you've got to overlap your branches a little bit here and there just to break the line, make it look natural. We'll put some other greens in as well in a minute. So that is still looking too Christmassy. Lovely. And I've got a bit of a row thing happening here, but we'll fix that up in a minute. All right. So now coming down into this more foreground sort of area, but first let's get some other green into these trees. So I picked up my mid green now, and I'm just zhooshing that around over what I've just already done to create again some depth and volume. So the dark leaves should go backwards and the lighter ones should come forward a little bit just to create some depth. Okay, so vary the greens a little bit. Again, squiggly sort of little marks. While I've got this one in my hand, I'm just going to zhoosh a bit of it around in here too, because there's some little short shrubs that sit in front of the trees. In fact, it should be a bit darker through there, I think. Need to come a bit darker through here. I'm just going to pick up my green, darkest green again. Darken off in there. And then there's green grass and stuff here on the foreshore of the river there. So that's coming together. All right, so I've picked this is my lighter green, my cool green. I'm just going to dab that around here and there a little bit just to get some light, a bit more light through there. I'm literally just dabbing it onto the paper. Because it's quite a creamy, soft pastel, it's sticking nicely. You might find if you've got a harder pastel, it won't be sticking as well. And that's a bit tricky. So it's good to have a combination of different kinds of pastels because they do different things. So your creamy, beautiful, soft, creamy ones would be really good for just doing this kind of thing where you want the pastel to sort of sit on top of the other pastels and not sort of blend. Whereas your harder ones are great for your drawings and doing all your underpaintings. So there's lots of different uses for different kinds of pastels. My favourite soft pastels are Blue Earth. They're just glorious. I ordered another box the other day. So they come in sets or individually. But the sets are beautiful. I've got the purple set a few weeks back, and then I just ordered the cerulean blues, which is going to be delicious. So it's nice to have a combo of different pastels because they all do different things. Okay, so I'm just going to start to tidy up this area. I zhushed a bit of that lighter green around in here. I'm just going to push it in a little bit. Just softly, softly. Or dab it. You can dab. Just to soften off some of those lines. Okay. So that's coming together well. And what I want to do now is just put some more of my tree branches in again. So I've just lost a little bit of that. Try to do broken lines now. So rather than using all the same shapes and lines, just do some little broken lines that wander off into the branches like that kind of thing. Because what's happening is now we want to get the foliage to sit in front and behind. So to do that, we need the broken lines rather than the straight lines. Otherwise, you're going to have to put more leaves in front of them to break it up a bit. But that looks right. It looks like there's a log or something over there. I don't know what that is. Put that in and see if it looks weird or not. I think it does. And again, just sharpening up this tree here that's got all the detail. Because this one is closest to us. You can see all the detail on that one. Not all of it, but more than the others. So that's going to be a little bit more information in there because we can see it closer. There's another tree just here. So bury your lines, break your lines, and just use sort of short, sharp little movements. So when you're doing the branches, do lines, don't do these lines because that's not what branches usually do. Some do, but not all. So you don't want smooth lines like that. You need to do lines like that. Okay, so sort of broken lines, but looking more natural, like the tree would, because it's got different widths and different sizes, different angles. So try to break your line and not do lovely smooth lines. Lynn keeps dropping out. Sorry, Lynn. Okay, so we've got a fair bit of our foliage in there. Not unhappy with how that's looking. And you can see on the riverbank, there's like a wet sort of grey line, I guess, that comes around. I'm using my grey and we'll darken it up and make it a bit more muddy with other things in a minute. But I just want to get that grey sort of line, which is probably the riverbank sand or something, running around through there. Okay. Putting that down there, and then between that grey and this grassy sort of stuff, which I probably need to do some more work with, this scrubby grass through here. So we can put a bit more information in there, maybe just vary the greens again, get a little bit more depth happening. Just so it looks a sort of a bit natural. And I might do some grassy sort of shapes like that. I know it's not actually grass, but we can make it grass if you wish. So I've just used my lighter green. Again, that's that lovely creamy one, the blue earth. I'm doing these little zhushy, sort of soft little sweeps, I suppose, with the pastel on its side to get a grassy effect without doing every little strand of grass. So that'll do for that bit. If you need to come back and sort that out again, you can. We'll put a bit more green through here. Oh, it needs to be darker. Okay. And then, of course, there's a lot of foliage in the foreground, so you need to start to look at that too. There's a few shrubs and things in front of these trees. So what I'm doing is I'm using my darkest green again, and hopefully that's making those little ones come forward in front of the foliage at the back. There's another little one here. You can put more light over the top of it to give it some sunshine. Doesn't it? I don't know if it's a very sunny sort of day in this picture. So just vague foliage. We don't need to put too much detail into this because it's over the other side and we can't really see all the information. But we do want to make it look natural. Okay. Now, down here on the edge of the river, where we've got all this grassy stuff in the front right, can you see there's quite a little, like a shadowy line between the grass, I'm going to call it grass, and the edge of the river. So that grey line that I just put in before, I'm just showing you here. I'm using my blue violet and I'm just creating a little line along here, and it's an uneven line because you can see it drops down and there must be shadow there that's caused by the grass that's growing taller than the side of the river. So we've got this little bit of a dark line, but it's not a straight line. It's quite broken and sort of random. So if you can find a sharp edge on your blue violet pastel, or better still, if you've got, which I did have somewhere, gone, you try charcoal if you can't get into there with charcoal works. So you could use charcoal just to mark that little dark line that runs around that side of the river. That it sort of helps to lift the earth up above the river level. And then we've got this grey greeny colour that sits down here going into the water, which I'll put more on now. You see what I mean there? Now, what I'm doing is little strokes, starting at that shadow line that I just put in and pulling it in towards the water. So I'm hoping to get the feeling of that earth sort of coming into the water, that it's like tilting down a little bit. So that's my goal, is to do that. And by pulling it from the dark shadow, when you do that, your pastel might pick up some of the dark and combine it in there, which is quite nice. It makes it look more natural. The other way you could do it is put your pastel on its side like that and then pull it across from the edge. You've got to make sure you get it in the right spot. And then you might need to just blur it softly with your finger, again pulling it in from the land to the water. So hopefully that's starting to look like a riverbank. I'm going to put a bit of my dark green. I don't know, it just needs a bit more something in there. It's too light. Just going to blob a bit of green on that. See, I just picked up my darkest green and I just literally did that. Because it's so soft, it will just stick to the paper. And then I can come back with a finger, pull it out, and try to get that natural feeling of the different levels and dirt, etc. I think that's working really well. Nice, nice. Because we want this grey section to sort of stand out. And then when we put the reflection in the water, there's this grey area with the shadow and then the reflection. So we've got to make sure that we get all those things in the right place before we put the reflection in. So I'll just tip off my dust again. Okay. So as I'm tipping my dust off, it's all dropping down from the trees here into the water, which is not great, but that's okay. I haven't got much pastel on here yet, so I can fill it up a lot more and I can push all that in and get rid of it. So I'm not too concerned about that. So now's the time to start looking at your picture. If you need to stand up and walk away from it, do that so that you get a better view of it from a distance. And then you'll see what might need to happen or not happen. Okay, so I think I need to add a bit more foliage to that tree on the foreground and make it slightly taller. So I'm just going to do that. Is as tall as that one there. And then, because there'll be branches attaching all the leaves, just grab a charcoal or a dark pastel. Charcoal didn't work. You do some lines, just some very little lines in amongst the foliage there. So it looks like there's branches attaching to everything. You're doing pictures like this, you can sort of decide what you want to feature or not feature. So sometimes you might want to, make that tree really stand out, or you could just let it wander off into the background and not be a star of the show. Just getting some more tones through that grassy area there. Okay. I'm just going slowly because I know you might need to be sort of catching up a little bit. So I'm just touching up a few bits and bobs around here on the riverbank, putting a bit more of the grey on because it's gone darker with the other colours. Just want to put some little bits of highlights in here, just again to create the wet bumps and things that are going on in that part of the dirt on the riverbank. Lovely. All right, so we'll move on. Now we need to focus on the water. We need to really get that water happening. As I said, I've got a lot of dark that's kind of fallen down onto here. That's okay. I'll just push it in. So let's get into the river. Let's start up here at the mouth and really look at the colours and things that are in here. So right at the top there, we've got a lovely light line. So this is my lightest blue that I'm using. And it comes across quite light there at the tip. There's also some shadows and reflections in there that are quite dark. So we've got to allow for those as well. Coming forward here is lighter. Now we need to determine what colour do we use for those reflections. And to me, they look sort of not as dark as the dark green, are they? What should we use? Might try this mid green. I don't know if it'll be enough, but we'll see. See if that's going to be dark enough. Nah, I think so. Okay, let's try some of this dark green again. So back to that dark green, just putting a line across there like that, and then another one through here. So I'm just focusing on this back area here. Okay, just that little spot there. So I can see it's got like a thing that runs that way. So there's a horizontal reflection going on, which needs more blue in it. So we'll put some more blue here. Mixing the blue and green is making a nice sort of interesting colour. Okay, something like that. And then as we come across, it gets a bit darker through here. So I've got my dark green again. Don't want to use blue violet because I think that'll be too dark. Wiping my hand, not entirely clean, but anyway, I'm pulling this across. So we're going to pull the pastel across horizontal, then got to go down So see in that area there, it's like it's got the reflection of a tree that's back there somewhere. We should put that in so we can have an actual tree there. Let's put something tall just there. Okay. So that'll be the reflection of that guy. So what we need to do is put a little mark just here. Maybe another one over here. We've got to pull it downwards now. Okay. So grab a finger and just pull it down. Through there. Still a bit dark anyway. Something like that. I feel like I want to put more light in there. So if you do need to put more light in, just grab your pale blue again. Zhoosh that around in there. Pull it across. So reflections are a lot of push and pull, and it depends on where what's reflected and the direction of it, and it also depends on the movement of the water. So if there's no wind, reflections will be really still and clear. If there's a little bit of wind, which there looks to be in this picture, then they'll have a bit of movement in them. I like windy ones because you can actually get in there and push it around a bit. And you don't have to be too precise. So I'm going to leave that there for now. I might come back, fix it up, see how we go. But what I've done is just pushed it across and then pulled it down and then pushed it across again. And sometimes after you've done that, if you still want a bit more light or something, you can get your blue pastel, like pale blue, put it down here flat, and I'm going to pull it down just to emphasize that reflection. I don't know if that worked very well, not sure. And then I'm going to pull it across this way. See how it's all softer now? So there's lots of pushing and pulling. You've got to be prepared to do that and just go very gently. Okay, so now we're going to move up the river and lighten up this section here. So on the other side of this reflection that we've just done, it's quite light. So again, bringing in that beautiful pale blue. Okay, and it's got a little bit of pink in there from the cloud above. So just going to go all the way over to here. Okay, that's my pale blue. Find a clean finger, which I don't have many left, and pull that across nice and smooth. Beautiful. And then there's a little bit of pink in there, sort of up this way. So just put a few lines of pink like that. And once you've got that on there, again, the cleanish finger, pull it across. Just pull it once or twice. Don't do it too much because it'll just get too blended and then you'll get lost. You'll lose your colour. So just push it once or twice and just let it sit. So that's coming nicely. Okay. Just looking at my edges now where the water and the land meet on the left side. Just trying to sort of blur them together a little bit more because I want that to look wet and natural. Okay. Let's now look at, we've got a cloud here. See in the water, there's a cloud. So we need to put that in next. So what happens is it gets pale blue all the way. I'm ignoring the tree reflections for now. Go up to this lighter blue. Pull that across. And then we have this dark blue cloud, which sits about here. Just putting a bit of dark blue on there. And then a bit of purple. Maybe pink. Okay, so this is going to be our cloud. I feel like a bit more dark in there. See what happens. Okay. So grab your finger and just make sort of cloudy shapes, pushing this in a little bit. And then we can pull it all the way across to make it look like a reflection. Right. So probably need a bit more light blue, I think, through here. You just got to keep checking your picture, making sure you've got the right sort of tones and shades. Happening. Push it in softly. Just go softly. And then pulling it across. So pull it across the water. Now I want to add a bit of white, I think. Where'd my white go? So on top of this cloud, this pinky blue cloud, there's a bit of shine. Softly, softly. Pulling it all across like that. Okay. And then as we move up, get a bit more blue through here. Got to tidy up my edges now. Tip my dust off, it's in the way. Edges are getting a bit messy. I'll come back and sort them out after. All right. So then we can move on to this mid blue and start to bring up some of that through here. Nice big wide marks. Noticing too the reflection between the trees, the reflection in the water. There's light showing through here and here. So that'll be the trees reflected. And the tops of them, or somewhere you can't see it from here, but there's definitely more light through that area there. So I've got to put that in before we put the reflections in. So that comes through after. Pushing all this beautiful blue into water. Like that. Lovely. Just tip off the dust again. Go along, getting there. This is good. Good. All right. So we've got this deep, beautiful, deep blue here. Now, I know it's probably a little bit of an exaggeration of the colour, but it'll make it really interesting and make it pop. I think I'm going to put that here in this top or bottom right corner. I like that rich, rich blue. And I don't know if you can see all the little ripples in the water or not, but there are some little ripples there. So it's telling me there's a bit of wind. I'm also putting a smidge of light blue here and there where the clouds are. They might be clouds we can't see because they're up higher. Just suggesting a few clouds through there. Lovely. All righty, tipping off dust again. Okay. So now we need to look at the reflections on the other side. So if you grab your dark green, got to be brave doing this because we're going to put it all in our blue. Hold on a sec. Before we do that, let's just clean up the edges over here. If you've lost your edges a little bit, just using my blue violet to get a bit of a sort of a shadow edge along that muddy water through there. Yeah. Okay. Now it's looking too smooth and beautiful. It's not though, is it? It's dirty and wet. There we go. There we go. So if your things are looking too smooth, just throw a bit of dark or something in to give it more body or density. Okay, time to be brave. Now we've got to pick up the dark green, and I can see that there's a reflection here. Okay. And then we're just going to do the really dark green areas. Don't worry about all the soft bits that wisp off the top. So all these soft blurry bits, we'll make them afterwards. We're just going to get all this dark stuff down here that's really close to the edge of the water. And we're not going to worry yet about the other. So if I'm using this little soft dark green pastel on its side, and I'm just pulling it out from the water's edge. Okay. Remember those bits where it was lighter? Maybe leave those for now. Leave a little gap for those, because we've got to draw in the branches. And pulling it all down, right? So we want to go vertical, pulling your pastel vertical like that. Because what we're going to do is put our fingers into it and pull it. And that will then pull the pastel through the blue and merge it together and hopefully create lovely little ripples. All right. So where we've got those little branches in this lighter area, you can just do some lines like that with your pastel. Just do some little lines. More here. Right. So that's basically what we need to have on our paper. Now, once you've got that on there, then we can start to add some other greens on there. So we've got our darkest green on there. Come over with your mid green and just zhoosh a bit of that around as well. We want a couple of different greens in here. Looking reflective already. Now, this is the tricky bit. Now we're going to pull the reflections into the water. And it requires a certain sort of technique with your fingers. So give your hands a clean, ready to go. So I'm just going to clean mine off as best as I can and dry them off on the other end of your towel. I like to use my ring finger. I don't know why, but I just feel like I can be a bit more precise with it because it's the same technique I showed you before, starting at the line and pulling and then lifting off. Okay, so I'll show you that. So if you've got your green along like that, along your riverbank, right, then grab your finger, put it on the edge of the riverbank and pull like this. And you lift off. Okay, so lift off gently so that what you want to get is this really soft edge happening. Okay, like that. And then once that's done, we're going to run across the other way just to get those little ripples happening. A bit hard to see on that sample, but that's what I'm talking about. When we pull, it's pulling it out like that. So we get these beautiful, soft, feathery edges. They're blurry. Just put stuff all over water. Oh dear, never mind. Okay, so we'll start up here on the right side. I'm going to take my dust off this just to avoid making even more messes. Excuse me. Sorry. Okay, let's do this pulling thing. So we'll start up at this end. Now look at your picture and notice how big this reflection is. It's not very big at all. Okay, so we've got the main part of it here, and then we're just pulling it softly like that. Okay, flick like that. Down and flick up like that. Beautiful. All the way along. Just keep checking the heights of the reflections. So I haven't put enough pastel down here to get the height in that it says I should. But anyway, just keep pulling it along like that. See how that's starting to get beautiful and blurry and soft. It's mixing in with the blue underneath in the water. And we're getting these lovely soft reflections. Beautiful. Okay. Pulling. I like to kind of, if you can, wipe your hand or your finger off every couple of pulls just so that it's clean when you go back in, particularly in this area here. So we're going to pull this as well, but just go lightly because I don't want to blur it too much. Just want to, there we go. That's nice. All right, so pulling all the way along. Right, now some of the reflections need to be a bit longer. So you might have made yours long enough, but I need to work out how long they go. So looking at my picture, I'm just going to work out the tree line in the water. So it kind of comes, just using charcoal to do this, comes like this. Quite a lot here. Right, so just using charcoal, you can kind of give yourself a bit of a rough line as to where the reflections reach to, because as they're coming forward, the trees are getting taller, so the reflections need to match. They need to be tall as well. All right, so if that's the case, you will have to put some more pastel on the paper over the top of what we've just pulled through. Something like that. And just noticing where it goes on the picture. So make sure you get all those bits and pieces in where they need to be. It's not all the same shape either, so there's taller bits and shorter bits. So we need to make sure we get all those correct so that it matches. Otherwise, it's not going to look right. It's got to match. So I just used my darkest green again, and I'm going to do the same thing with my light green again, just go over that a bit more. So you can pull and push this around a few times before we don't want to make too much mud. We want to keep our water lovely and fresh and bright, but we still got to get this lovely reflection. All right, good. Now let's start again. So we've got to come back up to here. Now I didn't do any more there, so that's all right. I'll leave that bit there, although my edges need to be tidied up. We'll sort that in a minute. So again, just pulling down. Start on the riverbank, otherwise you're going to end up with fingerprints through your picture. Be lovely. On the tips here, see on the tip in the picture, it's sort of, I don't know, a bit broken or lumpy. I don't know, tops of the trees. Just putting fingerprints in there now. Just trying to get my tree tops looking more natural, but that didn't work out. Sometimes you've got to compromise, haven't you? Pulling through there. Good. There we are, tipping off dust. Just going to clean this up a little bit here. Goodness. Get all the fingerprints out of there. Ah. Yeah, that'll do. Beautiful. All right, so now we've got most of our reflection work done. Next thing we've got to do is just pull it acrossways. So if you look at your picture, there's some ripples coming through here in a horizontal way. So that's telling us it's a little bit of a breeze. So what we're going to do is just pull it this way. Hopefully that will make it look like there's a bit of wind and movement in the water. And it's only sort of up in this top section here, not so much down there. So I probably don't need to do it at that end, but just up here in the top bit we can. Now I'm going to attempt to get some of these tops of the trees in looking a little bit more natural. Just touching my green on there softly, softly to try and get a bit more detail in there. See how we go. So now I've got to pull that way first. Something like that. And then we need to lighten up those little areas back here where we lost our branches. Jig that up a little bit. And then I'm going to pull it again. Need some more crisscrosses there, like this way. See how when all the lines are the same size and going in the same direction, it looks unnatural. So you've got to try and keep it as natural as you can. Now I'm going to sharpen up the edges of this again with my blue violet, just so I've got a definite edge of where the reflections begin and the mud stops. Put a little bit more of my grey in there. See how that just makes it look a little bit like it's sitting above the level of the water now. So that little bit of blue violet line gave me a nice shadow, nice little shadow across here, and then going up into the lighter grey. Now it's giving me a nice, looks like it's above the waterline. So use your blue violets and your shadows to create a little bit of variation in the line around the edge of there, because it's not a perfectly straight line, is it? Never is. So you want to, that broke. It's not good. And just use the edge of your pastels so you get a nice sharp line if you can. Cool. All right, so I think that's going to just about do the water. I'll tip this off. Just pull this a little bit more. Start at the bank so that you don't get fingerprints through. The other thing you could do if you wanted to make the water look like it's got a bit more ripple in it is get your light mid-blue pastel. Let's try this and see what happens. I like to try stuff. So get your mid-blue pastel, just lightly on your page and softly pull it across like this. Okay, we don't want a hard line. We just want to make it really soft. And if you just do it like that, you get a lovely soft mark that's not all the same width or size. And that makes it look really lovely. It's got some nice reflections happening there. So we can do all that up in this top right, bottom right corner. Try to keep them uneven too. So don't do them all in the same row. Just softly, just pull it lightly. Okay. To keep it nice and natural. Keep doing that really softly. I quite like what's happening with that. And then if some of it's a bit too much, you can just pull it across very lightly with your finger, hardly touching, just to push it into the paper a bit. And that's nice, isn't it? Yes, good job. I really like what's happening on this bank over here. Shadows, the lights and things. It's good. All right. So now we've got to come over and do this side. So let's get stuck into that. And we've got to get those grasses in below the little cliff. I'm going to call it a cliff. Now the cliff is closest to us and it's what we can see right up near us. So we should make that slightly lighter than what it is, I reckon. And it doesn't have a bank because it's higher in the water, and from where we're sitting we can't see the bank. I'll put a bit of grey in there just to see what happens. Don't be afraid to experiment with colours. if you want to make something, you know, lighter or darker, see what happens. And that's one of the good things about having a small palette, because I can't be bothered getting up to find another color. So I'm just going to try what's here. And that's good because it helps you try different things and see what works and what doesn't. And I think that worked quite well. It kind of dulled it down a little bit, made it a bit dirty. I don't mind that. So that was my warm grey with my orangish colour. All right. Now I want to put a bit more orange in here as well. So I'm just going to zhuzh a bit of that around over that reddish pink colour. And I'll have to come back in and fix up the edges of the water again. So I've just put a bit of the orange over the top of the reddish pink. I'm just going to push that around and blend that in. I like the blue over this that we did earlier. I think that worked really well. Just gave it a nice sort of shadow effect, didn't it? Okay. So we need to make that wet again. So let's grab our blue violet again and just very softly just mark around some of the edges of this here. Okay, so you don't want to press too hard. Just want to lightly mark in where the water and the earth meet because it's wet there. So we've got to make it look a bit darker. Okay. Once you've done that, then we're going to do the same thing that we did with the reflections. We're going to pull it in towards the dirt. So hopefully it'll start to look like it's just the wet edge. We don't want it too dark, but we just want it to make it look wet. Purple's a really good colour for wet. Now, I see I've made patterns in there. They all look the same. I've got these 3 loops coming here. So easy to make patterns, isn't it? We're creatures of habit. That's what we do. So I'm just going to change that up a little bit and not have a pattern because we want it to look more natural than that. So check your patterns. Make sure you haven't got all the same size or all the same shapes of something. Beautiful. Bring my water in a little bit closer to there. And then darken that off again. To there. So just kind of play around with that a little bit to get that wet water edge. There are some areas that sort of might have a bit of a bump or that sit a bit higher than others. So I'm going to try this grey again and see if I can get some contour happening through there. Maybe. Little bit that dips down where all the grass is growing out. Comes down like that. So it'll be probably, I reckon, depending on where the light is, it's hard to tell. But maybe there's not much light. But I feel like this should be a bit lighter because it's going to go down into there. Or should it be darker? I don't know. Let's see what dark does. This is a nice thing about pastels because you can try things, and if it didn't work, then you could change it. I might leave it dark actually, and then make this bit lighter because that'll come across like that or something. You've got to get the grasses in first because they're underneath this thing, this bit. So let's just imagine that's the edge of that part. And so we've got to put all the grass down through here. So if you're ready to do that, we can then get onto the grass. Just got to tip off some of my dust again. Water's getting dirty. It's very delicate, isn't it, when you're trying to not mix your lights and your darks together, and when you're trying to find edges and things like that. You've got to be a bit careful. Just playing around with contours. Have a play with this part, because you'll be able to make some lovely bumps and lumps and things through there, using your blue violet for your shadows as well. All right. So I think we might get into, I want to get a pencil or something. Let's see if charcoal will do it. Just wanted to get into sharpening up these edges. Charcoal's hard enough. Just go find my pencil, charcoal pencil or a pastel pencil in a dark. Okay, I've got this one. I don't know what that color is. 177. It's a dark brown. So we'll see if that will work. I just want to get these edges a little bit sharper. Sometimes it's tricky with pastels because they're so clunky and big and lumpy. It's difficult to get those lovely crisp edges. But I'm going to have a crack at it with the pencil and just see if I can make it a little bit more defined. Come through there. So it's always handy to have pastel pencils as well for this kind of thing, because it just helps to get into the pointy bits. Tip off my dust. That worked a bit better, didn't it? Maybe that's a good option. So that was a dark brown. Softly blurring off the edges into the rest of the dirt color. Cool. All right, now I quite like this light bit that's going on here. What's happening there? No, don't change my mind. All right, now just tidy this bit up here. Darken it off a little bit more. So again, on same as the other side, this side needs to have some variation in shape and tone so that it, looks real, I guess. Vintage. And the other thing to be aware of is the direction that everything goes in. So this has to look 3D. All right, tipping off more dust. Now get stuck into this grass. All right, so over here, I've got all this grass that comes out. It's sprouting out here. I've got my limey green color. It's going to do a little bit of a zhuzh with some green, and then this is my under green, I guess, under color for green. So I just want to put some of that down so I can grow things out of there. You can clean up the edge of the dirt afterwards. Don't stress too much if you lose that. Okay. So that's a bit of green. I'm going to put a bit more of the mid green in now. Just thicken it up and get it nice and lush. My mid-green has some dark green stuff to it from last time. Beautiful. Okay, now we've got to start doing all the little wispy bits. So tip off dust again. So the wispy bits. Now you might prefer to use pencils, but I'll stick with my pastels. I've just got to do some little grassy shapes like this. So I'm using the edge of my pastel where you can get a fine line. So this time we do want fine lines. We want really fine lines like that, okay? Little fine lines. And to get those, you just do these. You just go really softly, okay? And vary the mark. So vary the pressure, vary the mark. I sometimes mostly leave my pastel on the page still and just vary the pressure. So when I press hard, I get a harder line. If I press light, I just get soft lines. So that's what we're trying to achieve over here. So all this grass comes all the way down to there, doesn't it? So we'll put a little bit down through here. And then soft, wispy sort of strokes using the edge of my pastel so I get a finer line. Lovely. It's quite nice with that darker green underneath. We'll put some dark in a minute. It's sort of wispy and scraggly looking over here. So this is the under part. Just get all the undergrasses in first, right? There's a bit more up over here as well. This shrub thing there on the left. So once you've got a couple of layers of grass in there, then pick up your dark. Put a bit of dark in here. And I'm just using it on its side because this is a really soft pastel. It's hard to get a sharp edge with it. I think I've lost all my sharp edges. I'm just going to put a bit of dark down there because I want that to be the base, I guess, of my foliage that's going to go over the top. I'm going to put a bit of it in here as well. So just zhooshing it around softly. Okay. And now I'm going to just softly dab it in because I want it to stick to the paper. So if you want something to stick, be a background or be behind other pastel, blend or dab it in because that'll make it hang on. Okay. And then we can come back over and put more grass over the top. This is how you build up your layers to make it look authentic, to make it look real. Okay. Just dabbing, not blending so much. I'm just sort of pulling it and pushing it and dabbing it. I don't want to make too much mud. All right, good. This is coming along nicely. Now, let me see, what have we got here? I've got my mid-green again, so I'm going to start coming back over now with my mid-green. Put some more grass marks in there. So little short marks. Probably should use something that's a bit more earthy than Australian green. Might be a bit too limey. And then, oh, this one, this is Australian green. Bit cool. Just that around. building up that lovely, lush, grassy, reedy stuff that's happening in there. And now we've got that little tree, of course. Let's me see, what can we do with you, Mr. Tree? So I might use my charcoal just to get the branches in there. So it sits about there. There's another one that comes like that. And then just drawing in my branches. They're not very defined, so I think charcoal might work. We'll see how we go. Just going to get a few little lines in there, and then we can dab in some leaves and make it all thicker and lush. So charcoal's often a good option if you can't find a pencil or a dark. And often that will be a really good little alternative because it works nicely with pastel. So that's a good start to my tree. I've got my dark green now, so I'm just going to do little dots, little dotty shapes like this. See how they start to look like we did with the trees on the other side. Little dots. I want to show the water through the dots. I don't want to fill it up too much, so we'll start with some dark and then we'll come back in with more light. Over with my next light green, spider green, this is my mid green. I don't know what sort of tree this is. Not very good at knowing those things. Just dotting, dotting. Be aware of your patterns. Try not to make patterns. It's hard. Lost all my branches. So if you lose your branches and you want to put them back in, just grab your charcoal or your bit of blue violet or something. You don't want them too heavy though, so just try to keep it quite light and not too much. Sometimes charcoal won't stick. It just depends on how much pastel on the paper. There we are. And you can add a bit more of light green in there if you wish. Green is the nemesis. It's the hardest colour to find at all times, pretty much. Never find the perfect green. Have to do, I think. I don't want to put too much emphasis on this little tree because it's not really the highlight. It's just the supporting act, isn't it, of everything else. I've just literally just dabbed it with my finger then to push it off into the distance a little bit more so that it doesn't feature too much. Nice. All right, so I might just finish up this edge here where the grass is, just so we've got a nice clean edge of earth and dirt. I picked up my ready terracotta colour. Just going to sharpen up the edge here. That. And around here. And just smush a bit of it over the top. And then I softly just push that in a little bit. My dust. Be a bit sharper just along here. It's a bit too wishy-washy. Coming in now with a nice sharp line. Yeah, that's better. And then again, I could just smudge some of this color across here. So this is my orange. And of course, there's going to be dips and funnels and lumps and bumps and things through there. So I've just picked up a bit of blue violet, shushed that around in a couple of spots. Okay, and then I'm just going to push it in softly, so that it's still there but not really strong, because we just want to create the feeling of, you know, bumpy, uneven. And if that's not enough, you might want to add a bit more. More. So you can see the blue violet's very, very dusty and really soft. So when you're using it, just go gently. Don't use too much because it's really quite strong. With the grey, there it is. Grey. Same with the grey. If the grey's slightly lighter, I can use that as a little bit of a highlighter in some spots, just to give it a bit more contour. And there we go. That'll do. That'll do, pink. That'll do. Keep off my dust. Was that, ladies? We did a landscape in 3 hours. Not bad. Not bad at all. All right. So once you've finished your painting and you're happy with it, you might want to continue working on it. Just make sure you pop your name on. Like that. This is a white charcoal pencil, which I really like to use with my pastels. For some reason, the charcoal pencil seems to stick a bit better than the pastel pencils. So I usually use that for my signature. And, you know, for highlights, if you want to get in and really lighten something up, you could use your charcoal pencil for that. Even for these bits, if you wanted to get a bit more marks in your water, you could use it for that as well. New that across like that. It's quite good. But yes, the white charcoal seems to be a bit whiter than the white pastel pencil. So if you see them in the art shop, grab a couple, because they sell really quickly and they don't come in very often, from what I remember anyway. Might do now. But yeah, that's that. All right, so I think we're just about done. You could run around your picture with your charcoal or white pencil and just highlight some of those little watery areas if you wanted to. Just get a bit more shine in there. Same with pastels. You've got to wipe your pencil off, because it'll pick up the colour underneath it. And I think we're done. Beautiful. All right, so if you've been watching this video and painting along with me, I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you've got a beautiful portrait now, or not portrait, what is it? Landscape ready to go. But do continue working on it if you need to. And I would love to see your paintings. So send them through to me when they're done. Okay.
Thanks, Jeannie.